Welcome and thanks for joining us. My guests today are Bill Evanow. He's the Vice President of Federal Sales at Coupa, and Tom Voshell. He's the Vice President of the Federal Program Office and the National Security Officer at Coupa. Gentlemen, good to have you both with us.
Thank you, Tom. Good to be here.
And in this era of cloud and cloud adoption, we talk about adoption, but then you have to live with the cloud. And that brings up the idea of spend management. And the two words have obvious meaning, but in the context today, they have special meanings. So let's start with what you mean by spend management and the implications of it.
Yeah, spend management is the process of tracking, controlling, and optimizing organizational expenditures with the concept of maximum use of and controlling costs and to optimize the efficiencies for the government.
So would you say then spend management concerns not just what you're spending, but making sure that you're getting the most from a dollar? Because you might need to spend a dollar, but you want to make sure that you're getting that cloud service and service level agreement output that you had contracted for.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, Tom and I have talked about things like managing procurement, supplier relationships, invoicing, budgeting, things like that. There's a lot of different concepts that flow through the term spend management. At the end of the day, it's all around efficiency, around effectiveness, and around trust in a system that can be controlled better, and where you can have less steps. And it's sort of easier for people to use.
And can you automate that process? Because I think of the early days of federal cell phones, and people used to get 700-mile long printouts of every call made. That didn't help spend management very well.
Well, that's one of the key points on where the systems are today, is the flexible automation of it, such that when a user wants to buy something, how can they quickly and easily buy that, but follow all the procedures and processes that are necessary to make sure that goes through the financial controls.
Right, so you have to have that coupling between what you're doing technically and your agency or your organization's financial system.
Most certainly.
Yeah, and you can also define it as sort of an integration, a flow between accounts payable, as an example, and the procurement systems, where we work to automate that and make it effectively just a simpler task to do, right? Because everybody buys, and every organization buys something, right? It can be strategic acquisition, it can be a need, or like a basic need, such as pencils or computer, laptops, things like that. Or it can be something that aligns with the mission of the actual organization.
Mm-hmm. Right, in the federal government too, we have this overlay of a condition of continuing resolutions and the illegal nature of spending money you don't have. Cloud, on the other hand, is an ongoing expenditure like a utility. You can't suddenly not pay. So I imagine spend management is really important in the stop and go nature of federal budgeting too.
Well, when you look at things like a continuing resolution, you want to make sure that you're still supplying what you need. So if I need printer paper, you're not going to stop buying printer paper because there's a continuing resolution, but you want to make sure that when you're buying it off contract at the least price you can get. And that's, you come in when you say spend management. What am I buying? Where am I buying it from? And do I have the proper authorization to buy it? So hit a CR, it may say, no, you can't buy that. That has to be deferred. Or yes, you can buy it, but rather than going around the system and buying something for a higher price, is make sure that I'm buying it off contract and I'm getting the government the lowest possible price for it.
Right, so it's not simply an accounting exercise, spend management, it's also a strategic planning, sounds like.
Absolutely true. And I mean, the way that we should look at the lens is there's a unified platform. And with that, you essentially are breaking down the silos. And that's for visibility, that's for accountability, and that's for controls. And it's an ongoing thing. So you're not wrong in stating what a cloud offering is. It's a forever, if you will.
Sure. And tell us more about Coupa in this whole area of spend management.
Yeah, so a little background on Coupa. We are 18 years old now, and we were founded back in 2006 when, over a cup of coffee at the Coupa Cafe in Palo Alto, California.
A cuppa at the Coupa.
Exactly, yeah. They actually came up with the idea of this innovative approach to e-procurement in the cloud. So if you go back to 2006, the cloud at that time was just beginning to get into the mainstream vernacular. So it wasn't a lot of knowledge about it. But a couple other things to put in perspective, Tom, is that Workday and AWS, big names today, were actually launched in 2006. And that was still a year before the first iPhone in 2007. Coupa's been around a long time. And so they have had a lot of impact on a lot of organizations. So globally, Coupa has been responsible for helping organizations, $6 trillion in spend that's been created using the Coupa platform. Another point of fact is over 10 million suppliers globally do it by using Coupa. So they're using the Coupa platform. And so to my point earlier about it's sort of there and continues to be used, it's a very user-friendly platform, and it was designed and has been iterating with the innovation of 3 releases a year. And with that, you get hundreds of features in our product portfolio that then are pushed out to our clients all at once together. So.
And by the way, were you able to get Coupa.com from the coffee shop?
Well, you know what? There's still 3 Coupa cafes in Palo Alto. So that's a good question. I don't know the answer to that.
Well, we found you no problem online, so I think that shouldn't be an issue. But I guess maybe go into a little bit about the idea of these functions, because you need to distinguish it, I think, from simply classical accounting for spending. As we mentioned earlier, there's that strategic piece of it that you bring to the table.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about what the government does. The government acquires things. They do acquisitions, right? You can break that down into 3 big buckets. As Bill said, strategic acquisitions, your big dollar figures. If you look in DoD, that's buying a weapons system. In the civilian side, that might be buying a new accounting system as an example, right? And you have simplified acquisitions, which are typically purchases below the $250,000 threshold, and you have micro-threshold purchases.
Right.
Micro-threshold purchases are typically done on P cards, credit card. I want to go buy paper. I need a few cases of water, something like that. I want to go buy it. I want a quick, fast, easy way to buy it. So just buy it off a credit card. It's in that simplified acquisitions is where the government has the biggest challenges right now. In the contracting office, they spend a tremendous amount of time on that strategic buy, getting requirements straight, understanding what's there, the bid process, and making sure the government's buying what they are asking to buy. When you get into simplified purchasing or simplified acquisitions, a lot of that becomes bogged down in manual process. I need to create a purchase requisition. I have to get the purchase requisition approved to get through. And people look for any path they can to run around the complexity of it. And the contracting office really doesn't want to be bogged down with that, because it's taking time from that strategic where they really need to spend their time. So what happens is a lot of that slides down to the P card side, which is reactive spend. I don't know what the spend was all about until after I get the credit card receipt back. So the area where Coupa addresses, and where the big problem in the government that we're working to solve, is in that simplified acquisition. So how do I help a user create a purchase request that is what purchasing needs, has all the right charge codes and everything else in there, but the user said, I need to buy a computer. The purchase request gets created underneath all of that by the user just looking at a catalog and saying, I want that computer. Then taking that through and making sure that the approval process happens, the right people approve it, and not too many people approve it. So it's not bogged down with, it's got to go through 12 approvals when I really only need 3 people to approve it. So the end user gets, I can buy it off of a catalog, real simple, couple of clicks. Purchasing gets all the purchase requisition and the paperwork I need get filled out properly, and it's approved properly, and it's bought off my contracts. So I end up generating savings by managing that spend correctly.
Right. In other words, you can lose a lot of money or needlessly spend a lot of money, $250,000 at a time.
Well, a lot of what I hear is on the P card side of it, is people are using P cards and they're just buying, they're not buying off contract. So I end up buying something at a higher price than what I'm contracted for because it was easier for me to buy it that way. Well, that's not the way to do it. You're supposed to be buying off the contract at the lower price, and it's the same product. So bringing in an undermanaged spend gets it back on contract, but you have to overcome that manual process and simplify it for the user so that they don't see all the complexity that happens under the covers.
And in the platform of Coupa that people are using to do this, is the knowledge or the information about the agency's contracts or maybe the GWACs that it regularly uses, is that built into the system such that it can guide people that are making that acquisition to the best value vehicles?
That's part of the sourcing side of it, is where am I buying from? How many vendors do I need to put a bid out to? Can I sole source it? Do I need to put it out to 4 vendors or 10 vendors? All that comes under the area that Coupa calls sourcing. So you have sourcing, you have procurement, you have invoicing. They're all different functional areas that go together that makes this the end-to-end process.
And does it draw data from other existing systems? Say the agency has an ERP or it has a federal financial system. That all would have to come together, I would think, in the Coupa.
Yeah, and our world is open API. So our integration to third-party systems, including, as you mentioned, ERPs, is very strong, very proven. That's kind of our secret sauce on the ability to get up to speed quickly. And as Tom mentioned, some of the areas like POs and supplier catalogs and such, contract management, electronic invoicing. There's a lot of different categories, compliance, sourcing, as you mentioned, Tom. So there's a lot of areas where you can sort of branch out from a starting point, and that's pretty common.
And of course, agencies spend more on services, and even services are moving to fixed price units at that threshold level, at that simplified threshold level too. So it takes those in also?
Yeah, a lot of services are just moving to almost commodity sales. You're saying, hey, I want to buy that. I need landscaping services. I have a landscaper under contract. I want to do that. That's a simple purchase request against that contract to have them come in. Now, it may be billed on an hourly basis, but I've got that landscaper to do a quote against what I've asked for. I know what's there. I know what I'm expecting to spend on it.
What about professional services? Because even those are moving that way.
Yeah. We have a very robust professional services organization that does, in my opinion, where we really excel is in the expert services. So we would augment a third-party partner, a government contractor that we may be going to bid with, to deliver success on training, enablement, on best practices. And that in particular, I think, is, again, one of our strengths, that we ensure success. We're really myopically focused on customer success and longevity, right? Because it's, quote unquote, as you said earlier, it's kind of like a rent for life concept. We want to ensure their success, renew them, and then expand our portfolio and giving them, a lot of different pathways to explore other areas where they have inefficiencies.
Okay, and you are architected as a software as a service?
Yeah, Coupa was actually built cloud native. So it wasn't a existing, what you call on-premise software. It runs on, a Windows server or a Unix server that sits in a data center. It was built on top of the cloud. We run primarily on Amazon Cloud, and for our federal side of the business, we run on the Amazon Gov Cloud and Azure, which are both FedRAMP authorized.
Got it. So that means you're FedRAMP authorized.
Coupa, in addition to running on the FedRAMP authorized infrastructure, our product is FedRAMP authorized.
And maybe talk about how this type of product fits in the daily workflow, because a lot of people say, well, we offer a dashboard into this, that, and the other, and then you almost need a dashboard of dashboards. What does the contracting officer, that's your target, right, is the contracting shop?
Office, yeah.
Or the contracting officer's representative.
Yeah, so for us, it's all about giving them the options of when something needs to be procured. It's the when, why, how, where. It's also about making it easy for them. It's the visibility. It gives them also the controls over the organization's spending. And the areas in which we kind of break out include the spend management, also compliance, which is key to one of our focus on where basically you're spending on policies or regulatory elements, things like that, and supply chain design, One area that I'm certain we're going to touch base on with you, Tom, is also on AI and the importance of it. There are studies out there from various third-party analysts that talk about 96% of people use it, AI, in spend or procurement. 30% know what they're doing with it. And there's even a smaller number that understand how it's being done. So we're testing the waters. Obviously, the government has concerns around just the safety of it, the security of it, the ethics regarding that. So we've taken a step back on that with the government. But we're full in because AI was built into our platform over a decade ago. And we've compiled a lot of information on AI data and been able to use that in the way our products are designed and actually help them by cutting steps, by taking manual tasks and reducing that kind of time and make it quicker to market, if you will, for some people, and also getting rid of the stigma, I think, that happens with procurement and finance in most organizations where, why is this delayed? Why did I miss my deadline? Why am I not getting this approved? And it actually helps by cutting out steps, by finding quicker pathways.
It almost sounds like business process reengineering.
In a way.
Well, let's talk about what's really under the covers. When you say, a lot of solutions are like dashboards into, I'm going to give you visibility into what you currently do. Those are generally analytic platforms. They're pulling data out of a system, they're mashing that data around and giving you some sort of results. What Coupa does is the actual purchasing process. So from an end user saying, I want to buy something. Let's use the example, I'm going to buy 50 computers, right? I need to source 50 computers from different vendors. So I have to meet sourcing requirements. The government says, you don't just go out and say, hey, Tom, I want to buy 50 computers from you. Give me a price. I have to do that. So setting up the bid process of going out to those vendors, Coupa does that. Setting up the purchase request. I want to buy the 50 computers, everything that's in there, what department's going to buy it, who is authorized it, all of that. Coupa does that work. Going from the purchase request to a purchase order. I've received the bids back from the vendors. I've selected the vendor with the lowest bid. I'm now going to give them a purchase order that says, you are authorized to ship those to me and I will pay you. And then finally taking that purchase order, flipping it to an invoice from that vendor that says, this is what you're going to charge me, and passing that information over to the ERP that says, okay, I've gotten everything from the vendor. The user verified it and said, I got my computers. They're what I said they were going to be ordered. I've seen the invoice. The invoice matches what you told me you were going to charge me for. And I can even have a tolerance in there in case shipping charges or something like that get varied. So it gets approved automatically. All the way through to now to go to the ERP system and say, now you can pay that vendor for this. Coupa manages all of that. So it's not just a view into an existing system and pulling up the data. It's a re-engineering, if you want to use that term, of the procurement process that automates, simplifies, but yet adheres to all the financial requirements that an agency or a company has to adhere to say, I bought something, I bought it correctly, and I properly paid the vendor.
Right, so it's a compliance engine. I mean, that would be, I would think, is kind of crucial here.
One of the key elements of it is the compliance and the visibility into that compliance, so that at any point in time somebody says, was that purchase done correctly? You can walk through and say, here's all the documents, here's the trail of the documents, here's all the approvals for it, here's the invoice matching, etc. That an auditor can go, yep, I can check each of these boxes that it was all done correctly and according to the compliance requirements.
All right, and I wanted to touch back on that point of artificial intelligence. How does it come to play in all this? Which is, it sounds like automation of rules and processes. Maybe it's RPA. How does AI enhance it?
So artificial intelligence, from the Coupa perspective, since the beginning, Coupa made an agreement with all of our customers that we could take their spend data, so what they buy, who they buy it from, how much they pay for it, anonymize that so it can't be tracked back to them, and put it into a common data structure. The AI looks at that and says, okay, when you say I want to buy a computer, what is everybody paying for a computer like that across all of this $6 trillion worth of spend that Coupa has managed. Because you're sitting down, you call up CDW government and say, I want to buy a computer, and they go, okay, that's $1,500. Is that a good price? I don't know. CDW government's telling me that's a good price. But now from the AI perspective of it, look across everything at Coupa said and say, wait a minute. $1,300 is more likely the price for that. Now I can negotiate that. So that's part of AI, is understanding what data is out there, how it all relates based to what you're buying, right? One part of it. The other
And by
part
the
of
way,
it,
that's commercial data and not just federal data.
that's commercial data. Yeah. Federal data, right now, today, we do not put data into that data pool. There's concerns within the federal government of what data is shared, how it's shared.
Sure.
So Coupa has opted on the side of federal data does not go into that engine.
Yeah.
Right? And for the near-term future, it's going to stay that way. At some point, we might have enough to where it's no longer viewed as federal data, but until we get to that point, there's a firewall there.
I was say a wall.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
So the other side of AI is that users saying, I want to buy a computer, right? Well, to buy a computer, you need to fill out a purchase request. I don't know what a purchase request is. I have no idea how to fill it out. The AI goes, don't worry about it. I'm your buddy. I know how to fill all that out. You look in this catalog. These are the computers that have already been set up under contract that you can buy. You tell me which one you want. I'll take care of filling out the purchase request and making sure all the necessary information's in there. I'll probably ask you a few questions that I need, and then we can process all this. So making that buying experience simple and easy, just like me going up on Amazon and saying, I want to buy a computer and use my personal credit card,
Sure.
is I go up on the company catalog, I say that computer, purchasing gets all the paperwork that they need completed the way they need it to go to the people that need to approve it. It doesn't come back to me. I don't have to say, well, I don't know what my charge codes are. It knows my charge codes because it knows where I sit in the company. And it pulls that in automatically. Things like that.
And it knows the clauses that should be in the contract?
We don't go that far. I don't want to.
You're not a contract writing system.
No, Coupa is not a contract writing system, and I don't want to say that we're going to do that. But from simplified acquisitions, they're basically predefined contracts. So attaching the correct
BPAs would be good in there.
things along that line, yes. But attaching the necessary contract template to that sourcing document, no problem. And knowing that this template goes with a professional services buy, this one goes with a software buy, this one goes with a hardware buy, things like that. Those are all part and parcel of what Coupa can do.
Okay. Final thoughts?
Final thoughts. Where do we go with this? So many places. We essentially established the category of e-procurement. We have been delivering, in particular with the government, certainly with commercial over the years, and a simplified solution. We are user-friendly. We are FedRAMP compliant, FedRAMP authorized. We have delivered thousands and thousands of solutions to clients who then we have an organization that keeps them satisfied, keeps us connected. There's a community of users that talk to themselves. We have a Fed community of users that do that. All of that brings to bear how taxpayer dollars are being used efficiently, they're being used properly, et cetera. So Coupa delivers, and we are now just unfolding what the next decade is going to look like. Great excitement.
That's a good note to leave it on. I want to thank today's guests for some great insight. Bill Evanow is the Vice President of Federal Sales at Coupa, and Tom Voshell is the Vice President of the Federal Program Office and National Security Officer at Coupa. I'm Federal Drive host Tom Temin. You're watching Federal News Network. Let's go back to the studio now for more on the Industry Exchange Cloud.